Of another viewer who would like to know if you can tell us about your famous book, Little Women.
I did not want to write Little Women. The publisher said he would publish my father's book about philosophy if I wrote a book about girls that was not a fairy tale. So I wrote Little Women. The characters and stories were based on my sisters and me. It was so popular that I was able to achieve my dream of supporting my family.
Wow, Miss Alcott. It's so interesting that your most famous book is a book you didn't want to write. And I know that Kristy Bean and I grew up loving that book, but never knowing that you were pressured to write that book. And it wasn't really the book you wanted to write. I'm so sorry that the things you were passionate about and wanted to write about were so hard to write about at your time and be taken seriously. But they're asking you if you have children or got married. And I'm happy to tell you in the year 2020, we don't have an expectation in the same way that that's what women have to do. But I know in your time, that was the expectation. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I never got married or had any of my own children, but I raised my niece Lulu after my sister May died shortly after Lulu was born. Lulu was 10 months old when she came to live with me in Boston.
Another question, our final question about what is something you said that you think is important?
I long to be a man, but as I can't fight, I will content myself for working for those who can. I wrote this in my journal when I decided to become a nurse in the Civil War. Things were not always fair. I was a woman, but there were many things I could do.
Also wondering if you can tell us about your teacher.
My teacher was Miss Flowers. She read poetry to me and gave me these really big round cookies. And she said to me, you don't like poetry. I wrote down on a paper, yes, because that's how I felt at that time. She pointed to me and said, you'll never like poetry until you speak it, until you feel it come across your tongue, to your teeth. So I went out to the chicken coop where there used to be chickens and started reading poetry. In fact, I read all the books in the black school library and all the books I could get in the white school library.
Wow, so your teacher inspired you to start speaking again through poetry. Is that true?
Yeah. I'm glad that actually happened when I stopped talking because it wouldn't make me who I am today.
Yes, you have your own unique life story and journey. Can you tell about your poems?
My poems weren't those everyday poems that you're like, oh, this came to my mind, I'm gonna write about this. My poems were mostly made out of stories from my life and put into a metaphor like caged bird. It was about my childhood as if I was a bird stuck in a cage.
Wow, so you use metaphor for that one.
Mm-hmm.
I love your poetry so much. I was wondering, could you just tell us one poem?
Okay. This one is going to be Still I Rise. You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but just like dust. Does my sassiness upset you? Why are you beset with gloom? Because I walk like I've got oil wells. pumping in my, just like moons and like suns with the certainty of tides, just like hops ring high, I laugh. Did you want to see me broken? Bowed head, lowered eyes, shoulders falling down like teardrops, weakened by my social cries. Does my haughtiness offend you? Don't take it awfully hard, 'cause I laugh like I've got gold mines sticking in my own backyard. Out of the huts of his shame I rise, up from the past rooted in pain. I'm a black ocean, leaping and wide, welling and swelling that bear in the tide.
I need to get you back to the time machine so that you can continue making all of these great works in your life. But before you go, we are wondering, do you have any final thoughts for us?
A bird doesn't sing because it has an answer. It sings because it has a song.
Some of our viewers are wondering what kinds of smarts were your biggest smarts and how did they help you make a difference?
I had a lot of gaudy smarts, which helped me stand up to Cubby in that fight that I mentioned before in my book. That lasted 2 hours. My people smarts helped me connect with other people and like have people I could trust, like some of the allies I just mentioned. I was very music smart. I taught myself how to play the violin and memorize tunes and I like to play them for my grandchildren. And I was very word smart. They helped me write books and make speeches. Write speeches and then show those speeches to tell people how bad slavery was.
Mr. Douglass, I am so glad you have always used your strong voice, whether through writing, being a journalist, or speaking. You're an incredible orator. You have been so influential and you have inspired so many people. Our viewers are wondering, what are some of your dreams?
Some of my dreams would be for Black people to have the same rights as white. And like Black people just get arrested for no reason sometimes. So they could have a fair trial, having some Black people as juries. And the right to hold a gun because they could protect their property from other people. And the right to vote so that they could choose a good president or somebody who would help Black people.
So I wonder if you could leave us, Mr. Douglass, with one final thought today.
I would like to say one of my favorite quotes. If you learn to read, you'll be forever free.
To tell a story about your childhood.
I got a show from high school. I did not pay attention and asked too many questions.
Too many questions? Isn't school supposed to be a place where you ask questions?
And I got sent to the principal's office just because all the questions I asked, the teachers didn't know.
That's why they didn't want you to ask? Because they didn't know the answers? That doesn't seem right at all. It seems as though teachers should welcome questioning. That's one way to learn. That must have been frustrating, Albert.
It was.
I heard that when you were a child in school, you were very interested in the way the world worked, but not so interested in just learning facts. Is that true?
Because equations are super boring when you have to do them all the time.
Yes. I can imagine you being a child.
But not when you only have to do them once in a while.
Right. So were you the child that was always daydreaming and staring out the window and thinking about big ideas?
Mm-hmm.
How to spell a word or some of those kinds of mundane things? That makes sense.
We have about your job as a patent clerk.
Oh no, so everyone else, a lot of people at the a lot of people where I worked as a professor had monocles.
Well, I don't think you like to be like everyone else, Mr. Einstein.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us more about your job as a patent clerk? We're curious.
As a patent clerk, I made sure that inventions weren't just copies of other inventions. One thing I patented was a chocolate bar called Toblerone.
I love Toblerone. That's one of my very favorites.
That is so cool. I love
Yeah.
them too. I still eat them.
I'm very glad that I patented it.
Yes, it's very delicious. It's so funny because when people think of you, they think of science and math, but you've done so many different things with your life.
Mm-hmm.
And discovering amazing chocolate is definitely one of them. Can you tell us an inspiring quote that maybe you could leave our viewers with today?
Mm-hmm. Imagination is more important than knowledge.
I wonder, how did you and Annie meet?
From Alexander Graham Bell, he actually told me and my family about Annie, and then we met when I was 7. First, I didn't like her. I locked her in my room. I'll tell you that story later. But anyways, and I didn't like her. So once, it was like the day after Annie came, and I was just eating breakfast, and my family would basically let me just take food from their plates. And Annie was like, "That is not the way for you to learn your job." So when she saw that happening, she actually said, "Everybody out of the room." And every time I tried to take her food, she just slapped my hand away until I was like, "Okay, fine, I'll just eat my own breakfast."
That's right. Well, it's hard to learn things like manners that other kids might learn when your parents can't communicate with you. And from what I have heard, your parents kind of gave up. They didn't know what to do, so they let you kind of do whatever you wanted. And Annie came and thought, no, she can learn anything anybody can learn. And if she's going to have a good life, she needs to know how to be in the world. That must have been hard for Annie and hard for you to go
Yes.
through that period.
I think it was harder for me. I think it was both hard for us in different ways. Annie was trying to like get me to like learn, which was pretty hard because I had a lot of temper. And then with me, I like had like all these weird things being spun in my hand. And I'm like, what do these mean?
That's right. Thank you for explaining that.
And like Annie like not being the way that like my parents were treated. So I was like, who are you? I want to be with my parents. I don't want to be with you. Now I can go with them.
Yeah.
That's right.
Annie was a great teacher for you. That is awesome.
Speaking of all the things you have done, world traveler, the viewers would like to know where you traveled.
I traveled all over the world to speeches, but one place I especially loved to go was Cape Cod.
What did you like about Cape Cod?
I just like to like exploring the beaches, picking up shells. I couldn't really hear them, but I might be able to like feel them and say to Annie, this one feels hard, this one feels soft, this one feels like an oval, or something like that.
When you first ever went in the ocean, what was your reaction?
I got knocked over. This might make me start roaring with laughter, but so I might not be able to speak that well. But I got knocked over by a wave, and then it said, "Who put the salt in here?" And then I think Annie taught me that the ocean was made with salt. I don't know how, but
I love that story. I'm glad you told us that. You're just full of curiosity and really wonderful questions.
We have a question that is, what is an interesting story from your childhood?
I was now so once I was telling you about this earlier when I walked in my room. So when I first met Annie, as you know, I had a very bad temper. So I was like, I don't like you doing all this weird stuff in my hand. I don't like you being around. So I just took the key to my room and locked it. After that, I do not know what happened. I was a very mischievous child. So then my father had to climb up through the window, break the window, and then get Annie out. Now I kind of feel bad. Well, I was a kid then, but
That's right.
But before you go, we are wondering, is there an inspiring quote you can share with us from you?
life is either a daring adventure or nothing, which I think is very true because for someone like me, I'm blind and deaf, so it can either be a daring adventure with learning how to do stuff and making a lot of mistakes, or nothing, which is just sitting on your butt for your whole entire life.
I can't imagine you doing that, Miss Keller.
Happened when you organized a march in Birmingham, Alabama?
I was hit by a brick, but I did not fight back with violence. I kept walking. I was arrested for 8 days, and when I got out of jail, I organized the children's march.
Wow. And that Children's March is one of the pivotal events that helped change Jim Crow laws for good. What is something you tried to teach people?
To love everyone, to love each like brothers and sisters.
That is a very powerful message.
That is such an important message, even today. Thank you.
Do you have any final thought for us?
I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but the content of their character.
That is a wonderful dream.
We have another person who is wondering if you can tell a funny story you have from your life.
I remember I stole paper. I used to store papers in this hat when I was a lawyer, and I knew that neighborhood kids used to stretch a string across the sidewalk, and I used to trip over it, and all my important law papers fell off.
Oh no. Did you get angry?
No, I laughed because I thought that was a good trick. But most other adults would yell.
You're right. I think they would. I'm glad you have such a great sense of humor. I don't think a lot of people know that about you, President Lincoln. They know the thoughtful, serious, moral part of you, the honest part, but not the prankster and the person with a great sense of humor. So I'm glad you're telling us about this. I'm wondering, President Lincoln, since you're so wise on everything from politics to fatherhood, do you have any advice for us?
I'm a firm believer in the people, if given the truth,
They can be depended upon to meet any national crisis. The great point is to give them the real facts.
Wow. That is perfect for this year, 2020, where a lot of things going on right now. That quote would work very well because you're right. People are mostly good, and if they really understand the truth of something happening that's not going well, they're going to want to help in some way. At least that's my dear hope.
So before you go, do you have any final thoughts before you return to your time?
You can tell the greatness of a man by what makes him angry.
Why did you go to jail? You didn't do anything wrong. You were standing up for your rights.
Because of treason. I was charged with treason. Treason is fighting against your own country. I was fighting against apartheid so blacks could have equal rights.
You know, that's all in the wording. They're arresting you for fighting against your own country, and I would twist those words around and say you were fighting for your country, because your country's not just white people. Your country's all the people who live there. South Africa has many people in it, and that's really not treason in my definition. But that's a hard thing, because the people who make the laws and the rules get to decide these definitions.
Yeah, I was wondering, do you have any inspiring quotes for us?
Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world.
We have a viewer who's wondering, why did you refuse to give up your seat on the bus?
Because I really wanted somebody to protest about it and change the laws, because they were very unfair and ridiculous.
Thank you. Well, I'm so worried because you got arrested. What ended up happening at your trial?
2 white women actually lied. Yes, I'm saying that they lied, because they said that there were empty seats, but I refused to take any of them. But they did believe them, but I was still found guilty and fined $14, which was a lot of money back then. But Raymond bailed me out, and my friend paid the bill, and I was took to a higher court, and the judge said that bus segregation was unconstitutional.
Oh, good. You were very brave to do that. What kinds of smarts are your biggest smarts?
Well, I had big self-smarts because I was very, very brave. I also had big people smarts because I cared about people a lot and I felt bad for them being treated badly. I also had big word smarts because I protested stuff that should be true, and I felt happy about it.
We are wondering, do you have any final thoughts for us?
Well, you must never be fearful about what you are doing when it is right.
Thank you, Ms. Parks.
It looks like some of our viewers know that you didn't always agree with the laws of your time. So they're wondering, did you ever break a law?
Yes, I did break a law. I broke a law called poll taxes. Poll taxes are taxes you need to pay in order to vote. I didn't want to pay my poll taxes because the money to pay my poll taxes usually went to bad things, like the Mexican-American War, where America was trying to get Texas from Mexico just to get another slave state. And also it would go to slavery to send slaves back to their masters. Back to slavery. So I didn't want to pay. One day I was walking and I saw the sheriff, Sam Staples, and he said I needed to pay my poll taxes. I refused because I didn't want anyone to go to the American War of Slavery. And he said if you didn't have enough money, I could pay with it. I could pay it. But I still refused. I didn't want any money to go to the Mexican-American War or slavery. So he arrested me. This was important because it shows that you should only follow a law if you think it's a good law and not follow a law if you think it's a bad law. I call this, and so do other people, civil disobedience.
Thank you for that model. People are using civil disobedience even right this very moment as we speak. And so thank you for giving us a way to stand up when something is not right and be able to say so with our actions. A viewer sent in this question. Why did you want to build a house in the woods?
When my brother died, John, he died of lockjaw, a disease you get from shaving. If you cut yourself, there was no cure at the time. There's no cure when he died, when he got lockjaw, so he died. So for that, I felt pretty sad. But my friend Ellie Channing wrote to me and said I should go live in the woods. And so I asked my landlord, Ralph Waldo Emerson, if I could build a cabin in the 11 acres of land he had just bought. And he said yes, so I started building my hut.
Could you tell us, Henry David Thoreau, how you built your hut?
I needed a lot of wood to build my hut. So some of the wood I got was from trees I chopped down from Bronson Alcott's axe, Louisa May Alcott's dad. I also got some wood from a worker on the Fitchburg Rail Line who had just finished his work on the Fitchburg Rail Line, so he sold his house to me for $8. Then a couple of my friends helped me, but I built the house. It had a desk, a bed, 1 chair for solitude, 2 for friendship, and 3 for society, walls, and a door facing Walden Pond. All the money that I needed to pay for this was $28.12.5. Yeah.
Some of our viewers are wondering, what was a challenge that you faced?
A challenge that I faced was earning a living. After college and after I also tried to find a way to get a job, and I got a job at the Concord Public School. But unfortunately, the school committee said you should hit students if they were misbehaving. And I didn't think finally punishing kids is good. I didn't think I should violently punish kids. if they were misbehaving. So I left the school. I had the only time I was at the Concord Public School was 2 weeks. Another challenge that I faced was passing the exam to get into Harvard college. Because most of the work was classroom work. And my best work was outside work. And I thought outside work was just as important as classroom work.
I think that is a great philosophy to have. Are you going to say something, Jilly Bean?
I was just thinking about all the teachers that I know who would agree that you have to have integrity as a teacher. And if you're hitting and hurting children, you are not having integrity. You're not being the right kind of model or leader. And I don't blame you for quitting after 2 weeks. I really admire your strong moral character and the way that you take a stand when something's not right.
We were wondering, do you have any one last thought?
Yes. I would rather sit on a pumpkin and have it all to myself than be crowded on a velvet cushion.